about that infamous Y2K bug? Will some computers shut down?
Many here are criticizing the way the refugees were treated, saying Macedonia made an already bad situation even worse.
In the Cold War, it became trite to say that NATO was an alliance looking for a role.
What is it about Hamilton that seems to make it such an employment success? Statisticians have...
This was more than just a remarkable personal triumph. It was redemption for the whole Tour de France. Last year's doping scandal was...
The nurses say they won't go back to work until a deal is signed. Which side will blink first?
May be left to the Prime Minister to determine Canada's position and decide whether or not there will be a magazine deal.
Hi, I'm Knowlton Nash. On this edition of News in Review, water, water everywhere. But is it safe to drink? In the town of Walkerton, Ontario this year, tragedy struck when E. coli bacteria got into the water supply system, causing death and panic. Canada gets a new political party and a new political leader as the stage is set for the upcoming federal election. Land, farms, and who owns them became a flashpoint in the small African country of Zimbabwe this year as racial, political, and economic divisions exploded into violence. Was it really all about justice, or just plain hardball politics? A knifing at an Ottawa area school, and panic breaks out. TV crews rush in to cover the news. But how far should they go? When is it news, and when is it invasion of privacy?
Out of here! Go!
Our first story is about something Canadians took for granted until this year: the water they drink, the water they use. The belief that the water flowing through our taps is safe and harmless was shattered when an outbreak of the deadly E. coli bacteria struck the small Ontario town of Walkerton. Before the tragedy, the fright and the panic were over. 6 people were dead, over 2,000 made ill, and questions spread across all of Canada. Just how safe is our water, and who is responsible for making sure that we won't get sick when we use it? Canada is a land of lakes and streams, of mountain rivers and mighty oceans. Water, it seems, is everywhere. And most Canadians have always taken it for granted that there would be plenty of water for all our needs, wherever we live, in big cities or on a farm. And equally important, we always took it for granted that the water coming out of our taps was safe and would not harm us. But all that changed this past May when people began dying in a small town called Walkerton.
It's a community like many in rural Ontario. The kind of place where people feel the environment is, if not pure, at least not contaminated, but no longer.
It's actually, I'm really worried just about a lot of the children in the public schools and that. And yes, it's very bad. It
is a strain of the E. coli bacteria, number 0157. It has polluted the town's drinking water and affected hundreds of people.
Most of them are complaining of abdominal cramps and diarrhea. The diarrhea may or may not have blood in it as well.
The most serious, especially infants and the elderly, are being sent to a larger specialized hospital in London 2 hours away. Jennifer Stewart brought in her 3-year-old son, Craig.
It's hard knowing that these young kids are getting deadly sick over thinking that our water is healthy to drink.
Local health officials have declared it the worst epidemic of its kind in Canada.
So this is a very serious situation, and I can't say it any more directly than that.
No one knows exactly how it happened, but people believe the bacteria came from cow manure, plentiful in the pastures surrounding Walkerton. They suspect heavy rainfall almost 2 weeks ago washed manure into at least one of the 3 wells from which Walkerton draws its water. Many people wonder why they weren't warned sooner than yesterday.
It would be among a lot of people a total disbelief that such an epidemic caused by tap water could happen.
The mayor says officials moved as quickly as possible, and he claims the situation is now under control.
We will not turn the water on until we are certain that it is potable and that it is excellent water. And I'm quite sure if that takes a week, it will be a week. If it takes 2 weeks, it will be 2 weeks.
But those weeks turned into months, and in the end, 6 people died and more than 2,000 people got sick. In the meantime, the search for answers continued.
They are reaching into every part of the water system here, checking it from top to bottom. This testing is too late to save any of those who have died, too late to stop the controversy over this contamination.
People have died. People probably will die yet. We're saddened by all this. This could have been prevented.
The district's chief medical officer says Walkerton's Public Utilities Commission knew a week ago there was E. coli in the water. As patients with E. coli symptoms started to pour into local hospitals, the public health unit says it asked the town's water manager if the water was safe. First, last Friday, then again, twice on Saturday. Each time, the answer was yes.
That you get reports back saying that there's E. coli? Because
I did not say
that's
that.
what Dr. McQuigg is saying.
Today, town officials were under attack and clearly uncomfortable as they tried to come up with answers.
Why didn't the manager tell somebody about these E. coli results on Thursday?
I don't know, and I'm sorry, I don't know.
There was definitely not a cover-up as far as council was concerned, or as far as myself.
Officials admitted there had been chlorine purification problems at one of the town's wells, and they did know something was wrong with the water last Thursday. But they say the water system manager told them it was not serious.
It's a normal practice. It's done at all times. This isn't the first time that we've flushed and added chlorine when we've had a bad sample, to the best of my knowledge. And it's just a routine thing that is done.
You had the information on Thursday. Why wasn't it released on Thursday, or did Stan not read on Thursday?
Ontario's environment minister didn't find out about the outbreak until Monday, even though ministry regulations state a ministry office should have been contacted as soon as E. coli was detected.
There is an investigation underway, and we want to get to the bottom of this, and we want answers as well.
Tonight, the local police force announced it's asked the Ontario Provincial Police to investigate what happened.
It's a serious matter. We see it as a serious matter, and it needs to be handled appropriately, and that's all I'll say at this point.
While the search for the source of the contamination seemed to point to farmers' fields, the search for who was responsible seemed to point to the Ontario provincial government and the office of Premier Mike Harris. Many wondered if years of cutbacks to the provincial budget, of privatization of government services, and of downloading of costs from the provincial government and local communities were taking their toll.
You can shake Mr. Harris's hand.
He swept into town quietly. Ontario's premier wanted to meet privately with local leaders. On the other side of the building, hundreds of people waited, many looking for answers, as they have been for days.
I pledge that we will do what it takes to get to the bottom of this tragedy.
Many believe a change in provincial policies is at least partly to blame. Walkerton, like many communities in Ontario, used to have its water tested at government labs. Now those tests are conducted at private labs. Harris says the change should make no difference.
Well, under the new system, any irregular findings are to be reported immediately to the province as well. That is the system. I think you have indications that that didn't happen. That, I'm sure, will be a key part of the investigation.
The question is, why not? Certainly the people who run Walkerton's water system didn't notify the Provincial Environment Ministry or public health officials. But neither did the private lab Walkerton now uses for its water tests. The mayor wonders when it'll all end.
I would summarize it as being one of the worst weeks of my life. I guess it was one of the worst weeks that any municipality could go through.
So clearly a bad week for the mayor and for the people of Walkerton as well.
For Linda Buchanan and Al Frost, this is the reality of living in a town where the water can be deadly.
We're not using any of the town water anymore. I don't trust it.
Since this outbreak started, it's been a kilometer to the community center and back every day. These are the essentials: bottled water, juice, and bleach, lots of it, to kill any bacteria. The bleach isn't just for washing dishes. It's also used to bathe 3-year-old Dylan. Like the whole family, he's been sick. His parents are worried.
Like if he may develop even further complications from it.
We don't know, his kidneys could fail.
Families like this one all over Walkerton are wondering when things will get back to normal. if they get back to normal.
No one's telling the truth. They're just all hushy-hushy, and I don't know what's going on.
I won't believe anything that the town says, and it's going to be for a very long time. You know, and even when they say they've found the root of the problem and flushed their systems out, how do we know that our systems in our own house are going to be free of it?
Searching for answers in the mud and in puddles of water. Experts looking anywhere, everywhere.
We're out here open-minded, looking for anything.
It could take weeks, maybe longer, to find out how Walkerton's water became contaminated.
I want to begin.
Today, a surprising development. The Ontario government said it knew something was wrong with the community's water system as far back as 1998, but the government believed local officials when they said the problem had been fixed.
Many different organizations and agencies have each had some role or connection to the Walkerton tragedy, including the town of Walkerton, the Walkerton Public Utilities Commission, the local medical officer of health, and of course, my ministry.
I don't quite understand what he's saying.
In Owen Sound, the medical officer of health who blew the whistle on the E. coli contamination refused to be drawn into a fight with the government, but he said he wasn't impressed with proposed new rules for monitoring water quality.
You just can't announce something like that and not have adequate staff to do it.
New question?
Back in the Ontario legislature, calls for the minister's resignation and a public inquiry.
You didn't take the necessary steps to ensure that here in Ontario, and we're not talking about a third world country, we're talking about Ontario, Canada, in North America. People, 5 have died, including a 2.5-year-old child. There are 12 on the critical list, Premier. This is unprecedented.
I think it's very premature to be assessing blame to any ministry, to any official, to any government, to any municipality.
But 2 months later, the Ontario government seemed to accept some of the blame, announcing tough new laws regulating the safety of drinking water, and promising to spend hundreds of millions of dollars upgrading water treatment plants and sewer systems. Meanwhile, back in Walkerton, more than a month after the outbreak, people were still boiling their water, still waiting for answers.
Derek McDougall slides a clean swab, a kind of giant Q-tip, into a fire hydrant. Minutes later, several blocks away, it's doing the job, pushing out years of built-up sludge and residue before emerging, battered and torn. One small section of the town's water system clean.
We're not really suspicious that there's E. coli in there. What we're looking for, though, is any residue, any buildup inside those lines that where anything might hide.
It's not just the town's pipes. Over the next month, every tap and shower head in every house will be checked, cleaned, and disinfected before medical authorities declare the water safe to drink.
Showering's okay. Just be careful.
For Laurie Knox, some peace of mind, but still some lingering concerns.
They haven't found the source yet, and is it going to come back in and they have to do this whole process again?
For more than a month, the people of Walkerton have been living with water contaminated by a strain of the E. coli bacteria, many wondering why, how it happened, and who's responsible. The answers to those questions could come from these people, lawyers for a judicial inquiry, in town for the first time, seeking information from residents.
They are the important people in this tragedy, and Justice O'Connor wants to hear from them initially before we start the formal proceedings.
Working on the Walkerton inquiry.
During a brief meeting, some residents asked for money to pay for legal representation at the inquiry.
We want to know all the reasons why this happened. It's not just one reason, not just one person, and not one level of government or anything. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it happened.
After the outbreak in Walkerton, all water everywhere in Canada became headline news, and a surprising number of towns and cities did find potential safety problems that they're now trying to fix.
This is a farm with some manure storage here. In this location, what would happen with rainfall, you will get the manure that's on the concrete pad, can be washed down, can wash down through this little gully here, into the ditch along the road, and then will eventually run down into the river. And what we want to do with manure storage is prevent that by completely enclosing it so that the manure can't run off of the farm. This is a brand new ultraviolet light unit. I believe there's only 2 locations where it's being used on groundwater in North America. Inside of this stainless steel tube, there are UV lights similar, I guess, to the ones you have in sunbanks, except they're a lot stronger and they kill the bacteria.
I think that residents here are going to be really wanting to make sure that they can trust the public utilities here as well and trust what they say. But I think we also have to question. I think we just can't blindly anymore feel that it's going to be taken care of. We have to know what's going on.
Meanwhile, months after the E. coli outbreak in Walkerton, people are still wondering, where did the contamination come from? Who is responsible? And how can it be prevented from happening again? They hope to finally get some answers from the public inquiry now underway. A new political party has come storming onto the national stage in Canada. It is taking dead aim at the traditional political powers in Canada, the ruling Liberals and the Progressive Conservatives. And it has a charismatic and controversial leader, a politician who is attracting a great deal of attention, both for what he wants to do in the future and for what he has done in the past. The party is the Canadian Alliance. It wants to unite right-wing voters against the ruling Liberals, and that puts it in direct competition with the other party on the right, the Progressive Conservatives. But at the convention where the Alliance selected a new leader, the talk was all about a new day in Canadian politics.
Ladies and gentlemen, here tonight and those of you across this country, you have spoken. You have spoken for policies and principles that will bring change into this century. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first night to announce that we are into election preparedness for the next federal election.
That's Stockwell Day, the new leader of the Canadian Alliance, Canada's newest federal political party. On that Saturday night in July, he pulled off a remarkable political feat. He beat Reform Party founder Preston Manning in a head-to-head runoff. Day beat him soundly, getting 2 votes for every one of Manning's. And as he was celebrating the victory, Day sent out a challenge to Joe Clark, the leader of one of Canada's oldest political parties, the Progressive Conservatives, or Tories.
There are so many federal Tories that are here in this room and so many that have purchased memberships from across the country. Joe, I reach out to you once again with respect and sincerity. You served this country well. But it's only in that TV series, Survivor, that the last person on the island is the winner.
Day wants the federal Conservatives to fold their party into his Canadian Alliance. It's remarkable that this is even being discussed. The federal Conservatives have been around since the very beginning of Canada. Day's Alliance, on the other hand, isn't even a year old. But it has momentum, and that can be a powerful advantage in politics. It also has a strong foundation.
My name's Preston Manning. I'm running in this Yellowhead running.
Manning made that foundation, but the building blocks came from his father. Ernest Manning was a Premier of Alberta and the author of a book called Political Realignment. It called for a sort of uniting of the various factions on the political right wing, a merger of his Social Credit Party with the Conservatives. It would have bound conservative economic policies with conservative social and family values. Preston Manning took his father's ideas to a national platform. In the 1980s, he started a movement called the Reform Party. It was rooted in the West, a region which felt its concerns were being ignored by politicians in central Canada. In the 1988 election, the Reform Party won a single seat in Parliament. In 1993, it won 52 seats.
We're pretty pleased with how it happened tonight. We're pretty pleased.
In 1997, it came second only to the Liberals with 60 seats. Preston Manning was now the leader of the official opposition. But his party was only successful in the West. It had failed to win a seat east of the Manitoba-Ontario border.
But it's really only half a victory for him without any seats in the province of Ontario or anyone else, or anywhere else besides Western Canada.
To make the transition, and this is the hardest part, to make the transition from an opposition party to a governing party to go the last mile. I'm asking you to consider a bold new political strategy.
Manning's new strategy was something called the United Alternative. He decided that the movement needed to change if it was to have any hope of growing. It needed to attract more conservatives in Eastern Canada, and it couldn't do that as the Reform Party. It needed to become something else, but it was a gamble. By embracing traditional conservatives and people in the rest of the country, would the move alienate the Westerners at the party's grassroots?
Twice we've got 1 million votes in Ontario. I mean, the idea that I can't win or Reform couldn't win or our candidates couldn't get votes in Ontario is false. We got more of them there than we did on the prairies, but the vote splitting with the federal Conservatives prevented us and them from turning those votes into seats. So I was convinced something different or more dramatic had to be done to get everybody under one roof to stop that, and that's what led to the United Alternative conferences, which then led to the Canadian Alliance.
But the stakes were high for Manning. His very job, everything he built up personally, was on the line. Was he the leader of the future for this movement, or had the creation outgrown its creator?
Any support that you could give to myself would be very much appreciated. I'm not supposed to say it, but this is very much like a Carnival Queen contest. It's whoever sells the most tickets gets to be the Carnival Queen, whether you're pretty or not.
The theory was that if there were only one party on the political right, it would be easier for conservatives to team up to defeat the Liberals. But the reality was that there were two parties on the right, each representing very different constituencies. CBC correspondent Brian Stewart took a look at the differences on the right when the Reform Party was considering reinventing itself.
The Conservatives are one of the oldest political parties on earth, the party that built Confederation. Its great founder, Sir John A. Macdonald, gave it its essential character, the first party to combine pro-business and social progressive or Tory elements under one banner. This Toryism is a key ideology in distinguishing Canadian Conservatives from their U.S. counterparts. It rejects rugged individualism, instead sees society as a group of communities, each with obligations to the whole, combines tradition and social reform. And because Macdonald Conservatives viewed society as made up of many separate communities, they could forge Confederation by consensus, appealing even to Quebec patriots, which the party still attempts with mixed success. Canadian Conservatives also embraced a strong role for government, such as the building of the National Railway and creation of the National Wheat Board and public broadcasting in the 1930s. Even the Tory populism of John Diefenbaker would eventually lead to reforms like the first national hospital insurance. As late as the 1980s, Mulrooney Tories were still calling our welfare system a sacred trust. Though just over a decade old, the Reform Party also has roots in the long, colorful history of Western populism. Reform champions individualism, opposes what it considers the Tories' watered-down conservatism, dominated by central Canada, enamored of big government, addicted to loose spending. Sure, there are big differences, Stephen Harper says, but all of them can be worked out by a broad new right-wing alliance.
What future leaders should recognize is that these two parties represent, in my view, very authentic elements of the Conservative electorate in Canada. The PC Party represents the Tory tradition that's predominant in Eastern Canada. The Reform Party represents the populist tradition that's predominant in the West. Any future leader's got to recognize that that's the nature of conservatism in the country, and that whatever institution they have has to reflect those things. And it also has to reach out to the traditional conservative element that exists in the province of Quebec.
But how would traditional Tories fare in such a marriage? An alliance designed, after all, to shift Canadian politics firmly to the right. During the last election, Conservative Party workers like strategist Tim Rafe fought a remarkably bitter battle against reform.
It's crazy time. If you're talking about becoming the government of this country, and you're talking about a national moderate view of what this country is, you got to have the Tories there because it's the only ones who provide an alternative to the Liberals. And the only place there's a pool of votes to come from is from the Liberals. And you know, you tell me this United Right Party, what's it going to do for Quebec? Zippo, you know, not a seat east of the Ottawa River. They're going to be a government? Good luck.
That, however, was before Stockwell Day won the contest that Preston Manning was talking about. He is different. Day may believe in many of the Reform Party principles, but he is not from the party.
The West is Day's adopted home. He was actually born in the East and spent most of his childhood in Ontario and Quebec. But his roots are here and his orientation is unquestionably as a Westerner. He's been married to his wife Val for nearly 30 years. They have 3 sons, all grown up now. In their early days, he made his living as an auctioneer in British Columbia. When that ended, he moved to Alberta, where he became more involved with the church. That was in this small rural town of Bentley, not far from Red Deer. He was an assistant pastor at the Pentecostal church and then became the administrator of the Christian school.
Well, I believe Stock's opinions on almost everything are colored by his strong religious beliefs, and that he will use what means he has to implement those through government and in other ways.
It gets to some...
This is a criticism Day has often heard, and so he's had plenty of time to hone his answer.
So when someone says right wing, I guess I have to stand up and say, I'm guilty. If someone says Christian, I stand up and say, I'm guilty. I don't go about my political business promoting a particular belief.
For the time being, Day still speaks his mind without regard for consequences. Not long ago, he made a very personal attack on a Red Deer School Board trustee, this man, Lorne Goddard. Goddard is a lawyer by profession.
If the judge agrees with me...
In defending a client in a child pornography case, he made the widely accepted argument that Canada's child pornography law is unconstitutional. Day wrote a letter to the local newspaper suggesting that for Goddard to make such an argument, he must believe it's okay for anyone to possess child pornography, even a teacher.
An elected school board trustee.
And he questioned Goddard's fitness to sit as a school board trustee. Goddard is suing Day for libel, claiming $600,000.
Well, I guess issues such as gay rights, such as abortion, issues like the lawyer who represented someone with child pornography that he in fact accused of being a pornographer, sympathizer at least in his own right. Those kind of issues, I think, are glimpses of a Stockwell Day who very much believes in those issues and not separating them from his responsibilities in government.
Day has an answer to that. Each of the examples that has led him into controversy, whether abortion, gay rights, or pedophilia, has arisen in part as a consequence of the Charter of Rights. He believes the Charter has taken important issues out of the hands of politicians and given them to the courts.
And that then diminishes individual and collective responsibility.
Day spent much of the summer running again, this time in British Columbia for a seat in the House of Commons, a seat which would make him leader of the opposition. Meanwhile, Joe Clark was running for a seat in Nova Scotia, a seat which would give him a higher public profile. Day and Clark, 2 would-be leaders of the right campaigning at opposite ends of the country. 2 men and 2 parties with different visions and policies on what being on the right wing of Canadian politics should be all about. Public opinion polls suggest that Clark has the more difficult fight ahead of him. His Conservative Party is under siege and losing supporters. He has to stop the losses and find some way to make gains. Stockwell Day's rise has drastically altered the political landscape in Canada. But will it translate into a breakthrough in central and eastern Canada? The next federal election is expected in the spring of 2001. For much of the year 2000, the world watched as one country seemed to be coming apart at the seams, a country consumed by anger and violence. That country is in Africa, way down on the southeastern part of the continent. For the past 20 years, it's been known as Zimbabwe. Before that, it was called Rhodesia, or Southern Rhodesia, a name it was given as a British colony. The trouble that blew up in Zimbabwe in the year 2000 goes back to the nation's colonial days. Nearly all Zimbabweans are black, but the white descendants of Europeans who settled there more than a century ago control most of Zimbabwe's key industry, farming. The result is a complicated battle involving race, economics, history, and politics. No one understood the politics of it more than the country's president, Robert Mugabe. In the midst of an election campaign that posed a serious threat to his hold on power, Mugabe promised black Zimbabweans he would seize the land from the whites and give it to them. It was a popular promise, and it sent tens of thousands of blacks into action, people who claimed to be veterans of the war that led to Zimbabwe's independence from Britain in 1980. They moved in on the white-owned farms, demanding that the white farmers pack up and leave. It was a situation that made the farms fertile ground for tension and violence, as the CBC's Don Murray discovered.
In the countryside, the tranquility of this scene at a farm owned by a white farmer was almost surreal. Just down the road, neighbors were being forced to flee. 5 days ago, we visited David Stobart on his farm. He was drying tobacco and waiting for the spring auctions. For 8 weeks, he'd had squatters, 20 to 30 so-called veterans, on his land. The coexistence had been uneasy but relatively peaceful. Yesterday, that changed. The squatters went on a rampage, burning buildings.
When we drove down this road this morning, we were met by an angry crowd of so-called veterans. There were at least 100 of them at the farm compound. A black farm worker told us to get off the property immediately or risk being beaten or killed. We sped off, and at least 30 angry squatters followed us, holding bricks and sticks. This was the scene as recorded by another television crew. The Stobart family fled yesterday. Black farm workers in the region said they too had been attacked by the squatters.
The government is a lawless government. How come they don't just come and stop these things happening here?
Robert Mugabe tonight described the situation in his country as relatively orderly. This was his justification for not sending in the police or the army.
So you want me to set war veterans in the army against war veterans outside the army? You think that will work?
To understand how Zimbabwe reached this point, you have to look back to its history. Europeans, mostly British, settled in the region in the late 1800s and called it Southern Rhodesia. And from there, the story is much the same as those in other parts of Africa. The Europeans, although fewer in number, became the dominant class, controlling all aspects of life. Black Africans were turned into non-citizens without any rights in the only land they had ever known. By the early 1960s, they found they were living in conditions they could no longer accept. Well-known journalist Morley Safer of 60 Minutes, who was then a young reporter for the CBC, had this look at a changing country.
The predominant feeling among the Europeans of Central Africa is that time is running out. Here, where only 70 years ago, Cecil Rhodes and his band of pioneers planted the Union Jack and pacified the natives, the words partnership and multiracialism are the last hope of 300,000 white men living among 7 million black men. To Rhodes and his pioneers, the land, then known as British South Africa, was purely a business investment. And like all investments, there were risks. Unfamiliar climate, unfriendly natives. The climate they learned to enjoy. The natives they put to work for the greater glory of Queen and Empire and the greater solvency of the British South Africa Company. And so what is now the Federation grew and prospered. The boundaries were drawn, Northern Rhodesia, Nyasaland, and Southern Rhodesia. And the new pioneers came from a damp and decaying Europe to carve for themselves a clean, well-lighted place in the sun. Very few reckoned African nationalism to be a serious thing. Then came what many Rhodesians call Britain's policy of abandonment. A series of independent African states changed the map of Africa from imperial pink to independence green. In Southern Rhodesia, white men were talking of reforms that a few years before would have got them chucked out of the club. And two new words entered the vocabulary of the European Rhodesian: multiracialism and partnership. But was it too late? Robert Mugabe of the Zimbabwe African People's Union.
We are non-racialist in our approach. That is, we regard as an individual as an individual, and that everybody must be accorded his full political rights, whether he be white or black, educated or uneducated, rich or poor. And this is exactly why we are at the moment struggling to earn for our people one man, one vote.
That was a young Robert Mugabe talking about democracy and reconciliation. Then Mugabe was a rebel leader, anxious to gain a greater say for blacks in their own country. But as you heard, he was also talking about what we would now call tolerance. Almost 20 years later, after a bitter civil war, Robert Mugabe got his chance to realize his vision for his country. He became the nation's leader when it gained independence from Britain in 1980. This was the birth of a new country. But Mugabe and his fellow Zimbabweans faced tremendous tasks in rebuilding a nation shattered by years of war. 10 years later, the hopes for a democratic and prosperous Zimbabwe were still largely unfulfilled, and the country's citizens were starting to see their leader, Robert Mugabe, in a much different light.
Everyday Zimbabweans can be seen lining up here. They're mostly young and unemployed, people facing a difficult future in their own land, people hoping for a better one in South Africa. Zimbabwe has given them an education, but now it can't give them a job. The country's socialist economy has stalled, and the first generation to grow up under independence is losing faith. Even those who have prospered during the years of black rule say there is a growing resentment among those who have not.
We haven't expanded the economy to absorb the people who are coming onto the job market. These are educated youngsters, and therefore you could, so to speak, turn your progress or achievement into something negative.
The new luxurious headquarters of the Zimbabwean ruling party stands out in the capital, Harare. The man who built it is President Robert Mugabe. He declined to be interviewed, but his critics say he replaced a racist government with one which is corrupt. Mike Orette is one of the few white Zimbabweans who praises Mugabe's achievements, especially in health and education. But he too is worried about the future.
So we fear that a one-party state will undermine the development record of government simply because it is a one-party state, because the evils of one party will manifest themselves in time in this country.
And in time, challenges grew for Mugabe and his one-party rule. There can be little doubt that colonialism and white rule had left an unmistakable racial and economic divide in Zimbabwe. Before independence, blacks were required to live in areas called tribal trust lands. And afterwards, millions continued to live in these overcrowded, impoverished places. Mugabe had promised to start giving land to these people.
You cannot run a society of haves and have-nots.
The government turned to the massive farms owned by whites. In the early 1990s, it passed a bill giving the government the power to buy land, whether the farmers want to sell it or not.
It's a do-or-die issue. I can assure you. Do or die.
Mugabe said the land bill was the only alternative.
The farmers must realize that if we do not proceed, the people are going to proceed on their own and seize the land. And we can't drive them from those lands if they do. But we want an orderly system of resettling people, of acquiring land.
Which brings us back to the year 2000, when parliamentary elections were scheduled. The setting was not good for the government. The economy was in tatters. Zimbabwe had thousands of soldiers fighting in the Congo in an unpopular military venture. And many people believed 20 years of one-man, one-party rule was stifling human rights. Meanwhile, Mugabe's resettlement program had not gone as he had promised. Tens of thousands of blacks were still without land. But their hunger for it had not gone away. And faced with an election that posed the first real threat to his one-party rule, Mugabe tried to capitalize on the farm issue. Don Murray covered the campaign.
He is the only leader independent Zimbabwe has ever had, and Robert Mugabe is determined to keep it that way. This week, his supporters turned out in their tens of thousands at his rural election rallies. For the first time, his ruling ZANU-PF party is fighting for its life in parliamentary elections. Mugabe's carrot to the wavering voters is land. He'll give them the farms of rich white farmers.
This is not an election gimmick. We will intensify the program of land acquisition after the election. In fact, there will be quite a crescendo thereafter.
The carrot of promised land is small compared to the huge stick of intimidation. For months, Zimbabwe's countryside has been a battleground. So-called veterans of Zimbabwe's independence war have invaded 1,500 farms, trashed houses, beaten farm workers, and killed more than 30 people, including 5 white farmers. Almost all the dead have been associated with the opposition party, the MDC. These men now stroll and sing as if they own the land they've invaded. Intimidation has done its work. Now most farm workers are too scared to talk, and many may not vote for the opposition. This young man did speak, although he said he was frightened. He'd been beaten.
So yes, I've been beaten. I think that me I'm going to vote for the ZANU-PF, but I think we need a change.
I'm sorry?
We need a change.
We need a change.
That took courage. The veterans were watching him as they approached. He left quickly. Ray Choto was a journalist tortured by the regime's military police for writing about dissent in the army. He echoes the charge of human rights groups that state-organized violence dominates this campaign.
I religiously believe that torture is going on a daily basis in this country. It is only that people are not coming up.
Organized violence may be bending wills in the countryside, but in this campaign in the cities, it has only bred defiance.
Visa! Visa!
In Harare, the opposition movement for democratic change holds enthusiastic local campaign meetings. Here there's safety in numbers, and opposition leaders say the government party is on the run. Intimidation, voters say, won't stop them.
There's nothing I can do if they beat me. There's nothing I can do, but we want change.
In the night, in the city, there's jubilation among opposition supporters. But violence done in daylight in the countryside may yet deprive them of victory.
In the end, Mugabe's party barely won the election for parliamentary seats. But the real story was the strong showing of the opposition party.
These people celebrated the emergence of a strong opposition in the country. After just 9 months of existence, the movement for democratic change had won almost half the seats being contested in Zimbabwe's parliament. Their leader said the vote had changed the country. President Robert Mugabe, he said, was the big loser.
Anybody who believes that the future destiny of this country lies on Robert Mugabe must have his head examined.
Still, Mugabe had power, and he moved to deliver the land he had promised for so long to blacks.
We're on a farm here that's on the designated list. I woke up and I just thought, do I start packing? What do I do?
While thousands of people celebrated the impending handover of the farms, the strong opposition showing made it clear that many Zimbabweans had serious doubts about Mugabe's motives. Were these the actions of a man who wanted to right the wrongs of Zimbabwe's colonial history? Or did they belong to someone desperate to cling to power at any cost? We've all seen it on television, a car accident, a violent crime scene, or a natural disaster. It's all news, and the media is always there, taking pictures, asking questions. The journalists believe they have a right and an obligation to do so. But do they? Where is the line between the public's right to know and everybody's right to privacy? When do journalists go too far, possibly harassing people under stress? When is it right to say, "Get that camera out of my face"? In this special report from Ottawa, we look at the issue of how television news does its work and why the decisions made to keep those cameras rolling. Nancy Cooper has the story.
A student with a knife goes wild inside a local high school. Emergency crews go into action. So do the media.
The guy, he was like bleeding all over. There was blood all over the floor.
From the outset, some students feel the media should not be there.
Go! Out of here! Some students, if they didn't want to be seen or be on camera or whatever, just would turn away or walk away. Some students were very, very aggressive. Some students were making hand gestures towards us, basically giving us the finger. Others were screaming and yelling at us.
A school board official tries to order the media away.
Right there, this is our school property. We'll come out and we'll give you a statement as to the condition of the students and what's happening.
When a student under 18 is in our schools, the parents have an expectation that we're taking care of them. And that means that they don't speak to the media without parental permission.
The request is soon ignored.
There's no way you're going to please everyone. So you try and find an accommodation between the story that has to be told and a respect for people.
The police issue a statement, but the media want more. Who, what, how, and especially why.
What do you know about him?
Well, he's an outcast.
Did he say why?
No, man, my brother was just like sitting there and the guy just got off, was like, and started stabbing everybody, man.
There were members of the media inside the school talking to the students. Is it the best time to actually be trying to get responses out of teenagers just after they've been in a horrific incident like that? Do we need that initial reaction?
Victims injured, national attention. The event shocks the community.
Students streamed into
the next day, CBC shows students heading for trauma counseling.
I felt that it was important that that story get covered. There were a number of different issues.
CGOH stays away.
The principal, on behalf of the students, requested the media not go near Terry Fox School that day while they had their counseling sessions. And I had no difficulty saying, no, we won't go there. And it allowed us to show the students that we are sensitive to the fact that this is a very difficult time for them, and we have no right to always be invading.
The station also refuses to provide a live-eye satellite truck to CTV Newsnet.
We can't provide you with the truck because that would be a violation of our promise to the students not to go, even though it wouldn't be for us, but it is marked CJOH CTV.
Stay away becomes a growing theme. As the principal prepares to reopen the school, he appeals to the media.
Tomorrow is going to be a very trying day for our staff and students. My request is that the media, please don't come to the school.
Two local stations, CGOH and CHRO, abide by the request and stay away.
We're respecting the school's request to keep our distance today, but...
We honored it fully, completely. We thought that his request was very passionate. The story really had worn its course by then. It didn't need to be advanced. We chose instead on Tuesday to cover a story about troubled teens in local high schools and where they go for help.
CBC Newsday debates the request and decides to do a story.
Do you really think we need cameras in our faces?
Some students have other ideas.
Let me ask you a question. Either of you, if your child had gone to school and his friends had gotten knifed, would you like someone else shoving the camera in his face?
I don't think that hostility should be a reason why we back off doing a story. Now, there's a difference between being told not to go to the school and not to do the story. And it seems like the other news organizations in this city, the other TV stations, pretty well backed off from doing the story that day. We had students who were actually participating in the events that went on in the school describing what had happened. I think we got a much better picture of how well the school was handling this particular aftermath.
Later that night, parents attend a school meeting, again off limits to reporters. Inside, a police officer labels the media rats. The stabbings happened on the anniversary of another school tragedy, Columbine.
There were 23 wounded, 18 remain hospitalized, 9 of them...
Television's treatment of events like Columbine is creating a backlash, says this communications professor.
Should the media have done what CNN did, which was within like 24 hours, compose a musical theme for it and have a little graphical entry for it as though it were an ongoing nightly series?
How do you think the media could have done a better job?
gone away. Like, they didn't have to come here like the same day. They could have asked the principal. They could have gotten it through the school and stuff.
Shouldn't stick to detail. They should basically just, in a nutshell, say what happened. Unfortunately, there was a stabbing at this and this school. You go into too much detail, it's going to cause a stir. People are going to start thinking.
It made the guy like realize, like, oh well, obviously I'm going to get like fame, and like other people notice that too.
The media are an easy target. Young people are nowadays very media savvy. They know how the media work. They're very clever about it. That is their universe.
Atala worries we are in a new era of political correctness.
We should just think about what society would be like if the media did stay away whenever anybody said, stay away. It's important for the media to be sensitive. I think it's also important that the media fulfill their social role, which is to make information available. Sometimes that's difficult, sometimes it's disagreeable.
You stay away from an event and news breaks out. How would you justify that as a journalist?
I would much rather miss the pictures and be responsible than to have pictures for sensationalism only.
If we continue to kowtow to sensibilities of offense that people have, then we won't have a free speech in this country. We will not have a free press. Because if we start to get all of these requests, please don't cover this, please don't cover that, it upsets people, then what are we going to have? Just charity events where people are giving checks to the United Way?
I'd like the media to just stop for a second and take a breath and think about those kids that are in crisis, and think about what the impact of seeing every word that they may say at the heat of the moment in print forever.
The struggle between the media and people's privacy touches all sorts of situations. When people lose their jobs, are involved in car accidents, or have to go to court, the cameras are often there. In this part of her report, Nancy Cooper explains what rights the media have, and when the public can say, "Get that camera out of my face."
Can we ask you about why you're here? Lots of people object to cameras rolling. Some of them do it politely, in writing. Others get vocal.
They're my friends. I know the families. And you people just keep going and going and going and won't let it go.
When a woman was found murdered in this apartment, the landlord hired a guard and a Rottweiler to keep the media at bay. What about personal rights in public places?
We're just doing a story about taxi drivers.
This woman objected to being taped when a crew was shooting a story about the taxi business.
I wonder if it's the taxi drivers in the traffic.
I feel this is a violation of my privacy.
Does she have the right not to be photographed? No. The law in most democratic societies allows cameras to capture images in public spaces. News crews set up outside court, hoping for a shot of the accused.
Go in. Get the fuck.
Some accused take a shot at the news crews. What about the innocent victims? Some find the public glare a further burden to bear.
If a car accident happened, and typically when our crews are covering those kind of things, the people on the scene are saying, no, I don't want pictures of the shot, we will go ahead and we will shoot pictures because, it's happened on a street corner, it's happened in public. People have passed by it on their way to dinner or on their way home from work and are curious.
I think that in a situation like that, if a tragedy befalls you, unfortunately, without your own choosing and probably against your own better judgment, you become, at least for the life of that story, a public figure. Maybe not a huge public figure, but a small public figure with a small and often an unhappy role to play.
Grief is one of the most difficult issues for news organizations. When tragedies grip a community, the public also feels loss. Should that be a reason to photograph mourning?
We have people who object strenuously if we show pictures of a grieving family coming out of a church in a funeral, no matter how horrible the story. On all of those kinds of stories now, if we're not invited by the family, if the family does not invite us in, we do not go.
If the news value of it is so compelling and the whole community is being caught up in it, and the funeral is sort of a cathartic moment for everyone involved, including the community, then you're hard-pressed not to cover it.
Many viewers object, even though sometimes the family wants the media there.
We need all the support, media support and the community support. Like, I guess it's better if the camera is there to let other people know exactly what happened.
If the media had to get your permission before taking a shot of you, there would be none of this. Or this. Or even this. A landmark case in Quebec 2 years ago revolved around this picture, taken by a photographer who was on a public street. The woman was on her property when the camera caught her. She objected, and Quebec's court sided with her. But journalists worry that rising privacy concerns will keep them from doing their work.
When it's good news, they welcome you with open arms to a school. When it's bad news, you're quickly told by someone from the board or the principal or whoever that you're not to be on the property.
But some newsrooms are bowing to requests on several fronts. CJOH calls itself youth-friendly and applies special policies.
We love the fact that we can tell happy stories and that we can celebrate young people and what they do, and that we have the freedom to say to the news desk, they're having a really tough time, and I think we need to give them some space, and that the news desk and Max will say, yeah, I think you're right.
These are people who live within our space. This is our area. They are our neighbors. They may be someone that we work with. They may be our families. That's where we have to be sensitive.
There is a principle in journalism, I think it's called the Afghanistan syndrome, that the farther away from home you are, the more likely you are to describe things as they actually are. The closer to home you get, the less likely you are to paint things in the way that you really see them, because you have to live with the people, and people don't like having a mirror held up to them.
I think that the media do a disservice when they take their role as being one of principally comforting audiences rather than informing audiences.
Lots of debates, different approaches. Now it's your turn to judge. Let's see how you would have handled some recent stories. You're the news director. You get to call the shots. What to put on air and what to withhold.
Story number 1, the stabbings at Corrine Wilson High School.
Go!
Should the media go on school property to cover the story?
This was like a guy with no friends.
Should journalists interview young people?
My request is that the media please don't come to the school.
When classes resume, should the media obey requests to stay away? Story number 2. A toddler on a Y daycare field trip is left behind and apparently gets run over by the daycare van. Should the media show the scene of that tragedy? Should the media go to the toddler's memorial service? Should the media show the parents' grief?
And that's all for News in Review. I'm Knowlton Nash. See you next time.